What happens when a serial killer decides to use the 7 deadly sins as his personal playbook for the most elaborate and disturbing murders ever conceived? Picture this. A rain-soaked city where hope seems to have died long ago, and into this darkness steps a seasoned detective who's counting down his final days before retirement. He's seen it all, done it all, and he's ready to escape this urban nightmare. But fate has other plans. Enter his replacement, a young, idealistic detective who still believes justice can prevail in this godforsaken place. These two couldn't be more different, yet they're about to be thrown together in a case that will test everything they think they know about evil. It starts with a murder scene so bizarre it defies explanation. A grotesquely obese man is found dead, face first in a plate of spaghetti, but this isn't just any murder. Behind the victim, scrawled on the wall in what appears to be the man's own grease, is a single word: gluttony. The veteran detective recognizes this immediately as something far more sinister than a random killing. This is the work of someone with a plan, someone who sees himself as an instrument of divine justice. The killer isn't just murdering people, he's making a statement about the moral decay of society. Each victim represents one of the 7 deadly sins, and this madman is systematically working his way through his twisted interpretation of biblical justice. The second victim is a high-profile defense attorney, found in his office with the word pride carved into his flesh. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The killer forced this man to cut away a pound of his own flesh, then left him to bleed out while staring at his reflection. The symbolism is sickeningly clear. This lawyer's pride in defending criminals, his arrogance in manipulating the justice system, has been turned against him in the most brutal way imaginable. As the investigation deepens, our detectives realize they're not just chasing a killer. They're trying to outthink a criminal mastermind who's always 3 steps ahead. This isn't random violence. Every murder is meticulously planned, every detail carefully orchestrated to send a message about humanity's sins. Killer even leaves literary clues, forcing the detectives to dive into classical texts about morality and punishment. The third victim represents sloth, and when they find him, they discover something that will shake them to their core. What they initially think is a corpse turns out to be a man who's been kept alive but catatonic for exactly 1 year. The killer has been feeding him just enough to keep him breathing while his body wastes away, turning him into a living representation of spiritual and physical laziness. This revelation changes everything because it shows the killer's level of commitment to his cause. This isn't spontaneous violence. This is a year-long project of calculated torture. Fourth murder represents lust, and it's so disturbing that it breaks the young detective's faith in humanity. A prostitute is killed in a way that forces a client to become an unwilling participant in her death. Psychological damage this inflicts on the survivor becomes another layer of the killer's punishment, showing how one sin creates ripples of destruction that damage everyone it touches. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Just when the detectives think they're making progress, just when they believe they might be getting close to catching this monster, he walks into the police station and surrenders himself. But this isn't a confession born of guilt or remorse. This is a man completing his masterpiece, and his surrender is just another carefully calculated move in his grand design. The killer is calm, intelligent, and terrifyingly articulate about his mission. He doesn't see himself as a criminal. He views himself as a chosen instrument delivering divine justice to a world that has lost its moral compass. He's not done with his work, though. 2 more sins remain: envy and wrath. And in the most chilling moment of the entire story, he makes the veteran detective an offer he can't refuse. He'll reveal the locations of his final 2 victims, but only if both detectives accompany him to a remote location. Against all protocol and common sense, they agree, because the alternative is letting 2 more innocent people die horrible deaths. The drive to this remote location becomes a psychological chess match between the killer and the detectives. The murderer reveals that he knows intimate details about their personal lives, that he's been watching them, studying them, learning their weaknesses. He's not just a random psychopath. He's someone who's made them part of his grand design from the very beginning. When they reach the designated location, a delivery truck arrives with a package addressed specifically to the young detective. Inside that package is something so horrifically personal that it transforms the detective from a hunter of justice into an instrument of the very sin the killer needs to complete his masterpiece: wrath. Veteran detective realizes what's happening, understands that they've walked directly into the killer's trap, but it's too late. The final 2 sins aren't random victims found somewhere else. They're right here in this moment, with these 3 men standing in an empty field. The killer has orchestrated everything so that he becomes the victim of envy, envying the young detective's normal life and family, while simultaneously forcing that same detective to become wrath by committing murder in a moment of pure, uncontrolled rage. It's the most diabolical plan ever conceived, because it turns the forces of justice into the very thing they've been fighting against. The story doesn't end with the capture of the killer or the solving of the case. It ends with the complete moral destruction of everyone involved, proving the killer's point that given the right circumstances, anyone can become a sinner. The veteran detective retires as planned, but he's carrying the weight of witnessing something so evil it's changed his fundamental understanding of human nature. City continues to reign, continues to decay, and the darkness that drove this killer to his terrible mission remains, waiting to corrupt the next person who thinks they can stand against it. This psychological masterpiece redefined what a thriller could be. What other movies do you think push the boundaries of storytelling this far? Drop your recommendations below, and let's discuss the films that truly mess with your mind.